Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Please invite your friends, invite your network. This is a very special Instagram live that we have today. We are going to spend some time with our president and CEO, Travis Adkins. But before I invite Travis to join, I want to see more of our followers on here. So please make sure that you are inviting, you are tagging your community to join. Today is going to be really awesome. And I don't want you to miss any moment of this very special Instagram discussion. So as I said, share this link, invite your friends, invite your contacts, and let's really have a good time and get to know Travis Adkins. And I said, listen, there's no question that's going to be off bar today. We are going to spend some really wonderful time with Travis, get to know him as a person, get to know his career journey. So yes, invite your friends. Can I see some emojis? Invite your contact as well, and let's get this going. So we are at 11 right now. Let's try to get some more people on here, and then we will bring Travis in and get this going. Thank you for that emoji. Awesome. This is great. So I know that Travis is ready to go. But as I said, we're really, I just want to get us to be excited for this really awesome session with Travis, and make sure that your questions are ready, right? You're going to get an opportunity to ask Travis any question that you want to. Well, not any question, but questions within reason. So get your questions ready. This is your time. And yeah, so I think we are 15. We can bring Travis in now. I said, please give me some emojis. Let me see the excitement. Let me see the Hi, I think Travis is joining now. Travis is joining. Travis should be here shortly. Hi, Travis.
Good morning and good afternoon to all.
Awesome. I see some Nigeria flags. Welcome. But this is a really wonderful conversation. So make sure that your questions are ready. Make sure that you're excited. It's not a formal discussion. It's really informal. It's an opportunity to just get to know some time with him and learn from him, right? He's a very seasoned development professional, and we just want to make sure that we get in to know the man behind all the accolades that we read about. Okay, so to kick us off, Travis, I have a very special question for you. Can you describe your life as a teacher in Africa?
I'm sorry, Fed broke up just a
All
little
right, so
bit.
describe yourself, or introduce yourself as a taxi ride across the country. Choose any country you want, choose any city you want. Just give us who Travis.
Got you. I thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we.
Fantastic. I didn't quite hear the entire question, but it sounded like you wanted me to kind of describe a little bit about myself and my life. And one of the things that I've shared with you all in some of my opening remarks is just how much I'm a member of the African diaspora. What happened to African descended people in America and throughout the Americas, and how I basically was raised to share and to study and to learn about that connection, and to try to do the best that I could to develop my skills and my expertise, so that I would have the ability one day to be a contributor, a positive contributor to the improvement of the standard of living for the people of Africa and the people of the African diaspora, and certainly having the opportunity now to be in the leadership of the U.S. African Development Foundation is one of the key ways that I've been able to do that. So in essence, I am living the dream. And it's great to do here from Washington. But one of the things that I would want all of those listening to know is that I can't wait to get to see you all on the continent very, very soon. Once we start traveling, which will probably be in about 4 to 6 weeks. And so looking forward to joining you, whether you're in East Africa, West Africa, Central or South.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And I hope you can hear me now. I got it. Oh, perfect. So, Travis, what inspired your interest in Africa?
Yeah. Well, you know, what I would say, Afia, is I think as a very small child, growing up in a segregated environment in the American South, I started to ask questions about why the people who look like me had to live a certain way, were forced into situations of poverty, were living in environments that were unduly impacted by conflict, were locked out in many ways of the mainstream of society, didn't have the same educational opportunities or employment opportunities. And then very early, my mom was very serious about me understanding the world. And one of the things that I saw uh, in probably about the fourth or fifth grade was the one of the most impactful famines that had happened in Ethiopia at that time. This is around 1985. And what I saw was two things. One, that we were in a world in which it seemed to be okay to people that children would be starving and would be victims of conflict or war or challenges in government. But two, the thing I realized is that every child that I saw on TV every night looked just like me, looked just like my cousins, looked just like my classmates, looked just like my playmates right outside my window in my neighborhood. And that's when I started to make the connection that there must be a history here. There must be something that links us together here. And if all of that is true, then there may be ways we can work together to resolve some of these problems that history and policy and conflict had put us under.
Travis, that's really awesome for you to share. So a follow-on question to that is, what was your first career defining moment that made you realize that I'm in the right career? What was that win that as a
Yeah.
professional, it gave you the confidence that you were in the right
Yeah.
career?
I think there were a few, but there's one I would say in particular, Afia, and this is in 2004. I got a job with the NGO Save the Children,
Okay.
and they were sending me to Darfur, Sudan. And at that time, there were reports of genocide in Darfur, Sudan, committed against the people of Darfur by the government of Sudan. And before I left, they gave me a big packet of documents to sign. You know, whenever you start a new job, you're
Yeah.
filling all this paperwork. But what I realized to feel was the majority of the documents that I was signing were basically documents that were saying, hey, if you die out there, it's not our fault, right? That you waive responsibility and liability against us. And that was the first time that I realized the level of risk that was involved in doing that kind of work in those kinds of context. But I'm looking at these documents, and as I'm preparing to sign, I realize that this is what I had worked for. This is what I had studied for. This is what I had learned for, prayed for, everything. And it was this moment where you're saying, look, am I going to step forward boldly into this, even though it is dangerous? Or am I going to back down and be prohibited from my dreams because of my fears? And I decided that it was worth everything that I had put into it. And for me, nothing was more important than to try to help people in those dire situations. And so, one thing I say, Afia, is that in one way, it was a selfless thing to do. In
Yeah.
another way, it was a selfish thing
Mm.
to do, right? So the selfless part was that I wasn't concerned about my own safety or my
Yeah.
own being more than I was the people who I wanted to provide assistance and support to. However, the selfish part was that my own family was scared to death.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't want me to go. Whose mother wants their child to go into a war?
No one.
No one.
No one.
Yeah, that's not something that happens. But I did it even though they were afraid because
Yeah.
I wanted to do it. And I can tell you that I experienced the most beautiful and the most terrible elements
Mm.
of humanity in that moment, where you're seeing the tragedy of people losing their lives, but you're also seeing the triumph of people banding together to try to support one another. And I think that going there, overcoming the fears and the questions, surviving, making it back, I certainly came back a different person than I left.
Oh, that's amazing. So, Travis, there are maybe one can say there are myriad of challenges across the African continent right now. But if you had a magic wand to solve one, just one, well, which challenge would you solve and why?
It's a great question. I think at the end of the day,
Mhm.
most of our challenges are about governance, are about governance, right? And so the one thing I always say is that if you have an NGO working in your country, if you have a humanitarian assistance agency working in your country, there's only one reason that those groups are there. Those groups are there because they're providing a service that your government cannot provide or that your government purposely will not provide.
Mhm.
And so most of the challenges relate to governance and governments who either have economic challenges, uh, political challenges, administering their sovereign territory, the inability or the lack of capacity to actually serve and provide for their citizens. And that is where most of the problems begin. And then, of course, you
Yeah.
get into issues of conflict and corruption and other kinds of challenges. But like I always say, these are challenges that are global. I don't believe in placing a specific burden on the African continent as it relates to government. We have problems in our own government and governance. So
Yeah.
all over the world with Russia and the invasion of Ukraine and so forth. So I would never say that as a thing that is specific to Africa. But if I had a wand to deal with any issue, it would be governance. It would be governance in Africa, but it would also be governance in other regions of the world.
We appreciate that response. So I feel like we really touched on some serious topics, and now we're just going to give you some fun questions to answer. So what punctuation mark best describe your personality and why?
Oh, definitely an exclamation point.
Why?
Well, I just think I'm an enthusiastic person. I'm a passionate person. I'm excited about the work that I'm doing. And I am a person that's living on purpose. And
Mm,
so every has the emphatic nature
yeah.
of the exclamation point. Yeah.
So how does one live on purpose?
Well, I think the first thing you got to find what that purpose is. And what I would always say to people, what I think I discovered for myself is that if you look at the things in the world or in your society or in your community that make you the most upset, that bother you the most,
Yeah.
sometimes you find your purpose around those things. And for me, as I was saying earlier, the way that Black people were being treated in America, the way that people were being treated on the continent of Africa, the way that Black people were being treated in other parts of the world, nothing grabbed my mind and my heart more than that because I just thought it was so unfair. And when I looked at my mother and my grandmother and my grandfather, I couldn't believe that someone would think that they could mistreat them because of where they come from, because of how they look, because of who they are. And so
Yeah.
that thing that grabbed me from as early as I can remember. So I was blessed because I was never a person who had to find a purpose. My purpose came and grabbed me at a very early age. And I listened and I followed that path.
Awesome. So what is your favorite African dish and why?
Oh, it's Tibu Jin. Tibu Jin, Senegal is
What? You are speaking with a Ghanaian and you are not going to choose a
no,
Ghanaian
it's
food.
my favorite.
Why?
Listen, I told you that I was not going to allow it me make me a casualty of the Jollof wars on this Instagram live. So I love Ghanaian Jollof, I love Nigerian Jollof, but if I had to choose between the three, I'm going Senegal. I'm going
But there
Table.
is no three. There's just it's just one. It's just one. It's just one. It's just one.
That's my
Um
final answer.
But okay, do you have any special hobbies that you have to make sure that you do to refuel?
Sure. I'm a big time nerd, so I love reading.
Okay.
I love basketball. I am about to sign up and figure out if I can learn something about this game of tennis. One thing that I'm going to say here, it's a little embarrassing for my age, but it is
We are
not.
ready. We are ready for it.
But it is not uncommon in the community that I grew up in, and that is that I don't really know how to swim. And so, if you throw me in the water, I'll be fine. But like, to be able to swim laps and do it for exercise and all that, that's what I would really want to do. And so I'm going to work on that this spring and summer as well.
Okay. So you said you were a big reader. So what are the your five top books on Africa for all of us listening?
That's a good question. I love a fiction book called What is the What? And it's
What?
a book by Dave Eggers on South Sudanese refugees to the United States.
Okay.
Um, there's another book by Robert O. Collins called uh, A History of Sudan, which is a favorite of mine, and that's a place that I've done a lot of work. Another book on Sudan is by I believe his name is Robert Johnston. It's
Okay.
called Understanding Sudan's Civil Wars. No, the root causes of Sudan's civil wars. I got it right beside me. Um, I have so many of you, and I'm looking around because my books are all around me. Um, Also, of course, I have to say the Autobiography of Malcolm X, which is not specific to Africa, but it is about a person
Yeah.
who was fully immersed in the issue of the African diaspora, a person certainly who helped me
Yeah.
to understand myself, and a person that I could see myself in because Malcolm X, of course, was interested in what was happening to African descended people in America, but also in other parts of the world.
Okay. So, of the books that you mentioned, which one would you say is a cardinal mistake if you haven't read it yet?
It's a good question. I didn't do a good job on this because there's so many books on so many other parts of the continent that I would want to recommend in a place like this. The ones on Sudan just jumped to my mind because they're all around me. And so I don't know. I don't know if there's one got to. Oh, you know what? No. No. I got it.
Okay.
You have to go and get the book Born in Blackness by Howard French. Born
Okay.
in Blackness by Howard French.
Born
I
in Black.
somebody mentioning Sheikh Anti-Joke, one of my favorite all-time scholars, a genius, a polymath. But the book Born in Blackness by Howard French is really about how Africa and Africans are central to the development of the modern world, and how that history really has not been told. Uh,
Mhm.
so I think that in its new, it just came out maybe 6 months ago
Yeah.
or so, but that would be the one that I think is seminal because it speaks to diaspora, it speaks to Africa, it speaks to our place in the world, the contributions that we have made, and how and why we should be able to walk with dignity everywhere we find ourselves.
I love that. So, since we're talking about books, do you have any weekend must do's? So, is the Friday night and you're looking at the weekend? What are so the book title again? Someone is asking, "Born
Oh,
in Blackness."
Born in Blackness. Yep.
Born in Blackness. Yeah.
Howard.
So, good. So, I was gonna say, like, what are some weekend must do for Travis? Every weekend, I need to make sure I do this so I can recharge for Monday.
Yes, I think definitely the gym is in there. Definitely some extra sleep, uh, and
Yeah.
definitely some sunshine if I can get it is in there. If I can get myself out to any place that is in
Mm.
nature or near water, those things are fantastic. Speaking of food, there's another place I love here. It's a Caribbean place. It's called Jerk at Night. And Jerk at Night is a place I go to every weekend here in DC, because they have an amazing jerk chicken taco, which
Ooh.
not to be missed. So if you're in this area, you got to go get it.
Jerk at Night. We're going to be checking that out. So, what is one recent challenging decision that you made or risk that you took that you're very proud of?
I think, I talked about this a little bit of fear
Yeah.
in my swearing in ceremony remarks. I think some people might have considered it a risk to go from, a position in the Biden administration, a position at a huge, international development agency like USAID, to come to the USADF. But I personally didn't see it as a risk at all, especially because we are the only U.S. agency solely committed to Africa, because our model prioritizes African-owned and African-led initiatives, because all of our staff on the continent are African people, because in Washington we have more than 60% of our staff that are women, more than 60% of our staff that are African descended or people of color or people from historically underrepresented groups. And when you put all that together, I think we have an opportunity to be wonderful leaders in our space, and that we actually already are that, though not as many people know about it as I would like. Which is one of the reasons that I agreed to do this with you today, just to have a relaxed conversation, to touch base with some of our folks around the world, and to let people know, we're human beings behind all of this, driven by real passions, driven by real purpose, and committed in very serious ways. And so for me, obviously, not just a career track, but a path of service, which I've committed my life to.
Absolutely. So for all those watching today and joining us, please make sure that if you have any questions, you are typing it in the comments and I'll make sure to ask Travis. So Travis, you've been with USADF for nearly 2 months.
Yes.
2 months. What are some things that you've come to love about this great organization? And what are some things that you are still trying to figure out in
Yeah.
these 2 months?
Yeah. Well, let me just say that the second question is easy. I'm still trying to figure out everything. That that one is easy, but I think, I love the mission
Yeah.
that we have. I love the regard that people have for us across the continent, and in the United States as well. I've been doing a lot of engagements with members of Congress, and the reception we've gotten there has just been outstanding, with our U.S. embassies and colleagues all across the continent, which have also really been amazing. And so I just am really loving it all. And like every day to be fully immersed in Africa and trying to work to support not only the people of Africa that we serve, but also our partners on the continent who work with us, as well as our staff in Washington who do so much to make this all go around, and to seek out more creative ways again and give to you if you're like this, to get out our message, to be able to touch the people who support us, and to make sure that we have that kind of openness and transparency about what we seek to do in the world. So it's really been a joy.
Awesome. So now back to Travis again. So if Travis could be on any sitcom as a recurring character, what sitcom would that be, and what will your character be?
That's a really good question. I loved. I'm trying to think of some of the shows that I love. And we probably got some young people on here, so I don't want to say shows that
So maybe you can give us a response for the millennials, and you can give us a response for the baby.
I'm trying to think of what. There's so many shows I watch. The one thing I'm thinking about, of course, is the show A Different World, and I don't know how many people are familiar with that, but it was a show from the 90s that was set on the campus of a historically black college. And that one for me is one of my favorites because I was a young kid at that time. And just to be able to see all these vibrant young black people who were so dynamic and so intelligent, And so that was my favorite. And if I was on there, I'm sure I would have been one of the more social activist types of students, protesting against apartheid and police brutality and all those other things, as that's a little bit closer to my spirit. So that's what I would say. And if you don't know what different world is, you'll have to Google it.
So you're getting some affirmations with different worlds for sure. For sure. So if a movie could be made about your life, would it be a comedy, drama, thriller, action film, or science fiction? And why?
I think it would be a drama. I think
Ooh.
it would be, they have this term dramedy where there's drama, but there's some comedy in it.
Yeah.
So I might go dramedy if I
Dramedy.
change it up a little bit, just because I think that in the history of this country, of my community, there's so much that is dramatic. There's so
Yeah.
much that is traumatic, but there's also tremendous love and tremendous spirituality and tremendous joy and tremendous creativity. So
Absolutely.
much so much so that that culture makes up what I think many people see as the culture of the United States, right? But being driven by these African descended people who have been here now for over 400 years. And so I think a dramedy would be the way that I would describe it, because you can't escape the drama, but you certainly don't want to miss the joy.
So we have a question from our audience. So what's on your current playlist? Are you an 80s, 90s music enthusiast? Do you like Afrobeat? If yes, what's your favorite Afrobeat artist?
Yeah, I would say yes to all of that. And right now, I still have from last year the Kid album heavy
No way.
on heavy rotation. Uh,
Wow.
all all things Tim's, all things Burna Boy, and so those with hip hop, with
Yeah.
jazz, Big John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk, fan. I'm a big fan of actually like just I guess what they call lo-fi, which is just like really just like dope hip hop beats with no lyrics. Because a lot of times I want the vibe, but I don't necessarily want the words that a particular artist might be putting forth. Obviously, a huge Fela fan, and so that's always in the background. And we were talking about African music, then I started talking about jazz. I love
Yeah.
Hugh Mackay, and
Yeah.
others, Omar Jamal, and there's just so many. And I welcome, recommendations from folks as well, because I don't know as much as I should know. And so one of the things I do
Mhm.
for the person who asks about Afro beats is like I'll just pick different Afrobeat stations, whether it's on Spotify, Pandora, or other, and just let things play so that I can discover
Wow.
new things. And all the time, if I'm just letting something play in the background, I'm discovering artists that I've never heard of, sounds that I've never heard of, and so I'm really kind of into that.
We love it. So Travis, if you could lose one of your five senses, which one will you choose and why?
It's a great question. If I could lose only one, I I think I might go. This is tough. This is tough. I think I would have to go with smell. I think I would have to go with smell.
Why?
Well, two reasons. One is that I'm actually a little congested now. So if those who have never met me or heard my voice before, it doesn't quite sound like this, and so I know I can get by. Um,
With that.
but I think that it's just a process of elimination. Afia, I love food too much to leave out my taste. I love to watch the sunrise and sunset too much to go without my sight.
Right.
I love the sounds of laughter and waves crashing, so I don't want to lose my hearing. And obviously, touch is so
Mhm.
important to everything that we do in the world. So now, God willing, I don't want to lose any of them. But if I'm answering the question, I think I would go with smell.
Okay, so this is to help us get to know you a little bit more. If you had a theme song that played every time you entered a room, which song would you go with?
It's a great question. Oh, that's a great question. I think, okay, there's a few. So
Okay.
one I would say Umi Says by
Okay.
Mos Def. That's a huge song for me just because of the role that women in Women's History Month and my mothers and aunts and grandmothers played in my life, and that makes me think of them. There's another song called Africa, which is by the American Black American artist D'Angelo, which is also one of my favorites because really the theme of the song is how people in the diaspora have been separated from the continent for so long, and it's about the longing for that remembrance and all of that. Another is "Water No Get Enemy" by Fela, which is probably my favorite song of all time. Just the instrumentation
Yeah.
and the power in that song. And then the last one I think would be um, probably Love Supreme
Mm,
by John Coltrane, because again, that's just dealing with spirituality,
yeah.
struggle, dealing with community, dealing with aspirations of a people to overcome their circumstances and love for themselves. So those are I don't know if that was five. I think that's probably four, but those are those are that come to my mind immediately because I'm like listening to them every day.
And would you want, so maybe let's take the question a little further. Would you have specific situations for each of those songs? So say you are about to go and deliver a speech to our sponsors on the Hill. Which song
Yeah,
would you play then?
I think it would probably be Africa by D'Angelo,
Okay.
but because that one is the one. I tell you, actually a story to it. The year that song came out, of course, I was touched by the song itself, but also in that year, my grandmother had passed away,
Okay.
and when she passed away, I actually had this opportunity to go to Africa for my first time, and she was sick. And my mother was saying, "Look, you need to come home. We don't think she has much more time." And so it was looking like I was going to actually miss my first trip to Africa, which of course had been the dream of my life. And lo and behold, my mom told me that on a Saturday, but the trip to Africa, which was to Ethiopia, was on a Friday. So that Saturday before, she told me that, and then my grandmother actually passed on Sunday, like the very next day.
Wow.
And so I went home to Tennessee. I went to her funeral, which was on like Wednesday. I came back to New York City where I was living Thursday, and I took my first trip to Africa on that Friday. And so that song and her funeral and that trip were all kind of like linked up together. And so in that, I find home, I find diaspora, I find community, I find this sense of like ancestors and elders and mothers. And so that's what really brings it. And every time I hear it, it brings me back to that. So if you would have ever come by my office, Sophia, and I had on headphones and you saw tears coming out of my eyes, it 9 times out of 10, that's what I would be listening to.
So now we know we're going to keep that
Yeah,
song very special to our hearts as well. And thanks for sharing that story with us. So going back to maybe some of the more
oh, and just say, I see Bookman experience here. Love, love, love. I saw somebody mention Evoria, uh,
yeah.
and I love as well. So thank you guys, and greetings to you from Juba, South Sudan, one of my home places. I love South Sudan and Juba. Sorry, Afia. I'm just
No
giving.
problem at all. No problem at all. But please keep the questions coming and keep the comments coming as well. We appreciate the interactions and engagement. So, Travis, do you have a secret talent that nobody knows about?
Yeah, I think if you caught me when I didn't know you were listening, might be surprised at my singing voice. I think you might be surprised at the quality of my singing voice. I would not ever do it on purpose. You would have to catch me when I didn't know you were listening. So you won't be hearing that here today or in the audience. But
So
yeah,
no USADF got talent.
yeah, exactly. No, we can do it. I just won't. I'll just be a judge, not a participant.
Okay, so we have a question here. Do you speak a second language?
One of the shames of my life is that I don't fully and fluently, and so I did get a good basis in Arabic uh,
Okay.
through my travels and work and living on the continent. I did get a very good basis for a time in Amharic from Ethiopia, of course, and those would be the main two. But the language that I would say I'm probably the closest to having full fluency would be Spanish, just because I've studied it for so many years in school and in life in America. But even that one, I've never gone into fully. And the main reason I never went into Spanish fully is because I didn't. It's not like I was living in the Southwest of the United
Yeah.
States, and I knew that for my work on the continent, that wouldn't be the language that would give me the most bang for my buck. And so, this is an interesting point. I'm just kind of going on a riff now, Afia. Looking at the continent as a young person studying and saying, okay, wow, it's crazy that, it's like French, which is like, okay, that's colonial language. But if I learned French, I could communicate with people all across,
Oh,
North and West Africa. And then there's Arabic, of course, which would give me the
mhm.
widespread into North Africa and a little bit into East Africa with Sudan specifically. And then you have Swahili, of course, which I think is spoken in, somewhere between 9 to 12
Yeah.
countries on the continent. So that would probably be the one that I would choose if I wanted it to be an African language, but an African language that would allow me a broad span of countries, not just one country like Amharic, where it's really only spoken in Ethiopia.
Yeah. Oh, we can also throw in Hausa as well too.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
We can also throw in that. So, for the past 2 months, I've sort of been listening to you a lot, and you speak quite passionately about this idea of communities, right? So, in your opinion, what does community mean to you, and how does one create communities and cultivate communities?
Sure. To me, I think Wolof, yes, I love it. Uh, to me, it means everything.
Yeah.
And why is because, I said something in my swearing in remarks uh, that kind of struck me. And what I was saying was about community. I said, if you are a person who has been carried to the top of a mountain by
Mhm.
other people, how could you then take the credit for yourself when
Yeah.
you stop? And for me, that is to suggest that our interconnectivity or Ubuntu, I am because we are, and because we are, I am, right? So there is this sense that you cannot have one without the other. And certainly I know that that's true for me. Like whatever skills and talents you are given uh,
Mhm.
in your life, when you can't even spell your own name, when you
Yeah.
can't tie your shoes, when you can't tell your left from your right, when you can't even hold your head up to eat your food, and there are people who are to love you and to guide you and to nurture you through those phases. And so, in some ways, you can achieve maybe
Mhm.
more than they did because of them.
Yeah.
You can't be greater than the people who created you. And so anything that we can do that's great is really only a reflection
Uh-huh.
of where we come from and who we.
So, but I think COVID has, really ushered us into a more virtual world, and that is going to stay for the foreseeable future in many ways. So, how does one cultivate communities in a virtual first world? And when you are not connecting with people in person, when you are not traveling as much, when you are not engaging with people as much, how do we continue to build community, cultivate community, and empower our communities to take care of us as we take care of them as well?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Fia. But for me, the answer is pretty straightforward. I mean, it's things like we're doing now.
Yeah.
Actually, for many people, I bet this would be true, and certainly for my family, uh, when before COVID, we didn't see each other as much. We didn't talk as much. People are living in places. But now in the COVID context, we're having, monthly Zoom calls where the whole family is on there from different parts of the country,
Yeah.
able to learn and reminisce and be connected in a way that we wouldn't have been if this had not happened. And so I think this is a time to use the technologies that we have to do just that. And so to be here this morning is really a part of that, knowing that there are people all over the world who are sitting in my home office with me
Yeah.
having this intimate conversation. So it's really powerful to be able to do that and to use that opportunity. I see a question there, Afia,
Yeah.
about
Do you
youth and
still
interest
work with
in
youth? So,
yeah,
yeah.
100%. 100.
Okay, cool. All right. So, do you have any interest in
So
building the
I
next
was
generation of
say,
African Americans in development work? And I guess I would expand on that question and say, and what are you currently doing in building the next generation of African Americans?
sure. I think that for one, yeah, I will always be affiliated and associated with the next generation. Obviously, we were taught in my community as a people and in my specific community in Tennessee about the importance of this continuum of kind of like present generation, your elders, the people coming behind you, and how you have responsibility to all of them as part and parcel of being a good human being that is a value added to your community. And so that comes from me through mentorship, through teaching. I'm still teaching now at Georgetown University and doing lecturing at other universities as well. Many of those here, they won't know if they haven't seen my bio, but I'm also a person who is deeply involved and committed in prison education. And in the prison context in America is generally overrepresented by the African diaspora communities here. In fact, the program I teach in now is called the Prison and Justice Initiative of Georgetown University. And that program actually is where we teach classes to what are called juvenile lifers. And so there's a big controversy in America as a nation. Are we a nation that wants to be giving life sentences to children? And unfortunately, it's something that we have been doing. And almost all of those people are from the African American community. So it's a program that's about second chances. And then some of them are youth still, but many of them are people who were imprisoned at 14 or 15 or 16 years old, and they're now 45 and 50 years old. And I think that for me, the big part about that is not just the youth component and the redemption and the second chance component, but it's an opportunity to see America in a way that most people don't get to see it, which is behind the walls of a prison, to think about how we treat people, what we believe is acceptable, no matter what someone has done in terms of the conditions that they have to live in and under. And sadly, in many ways, I think that that is more reflective of who we are as a nation than it is about what those people have actually done. And so, very rewarding and fulfilling work. And then, of course, the youth work and the women's related work of USADF is front and center of my focus now.
Wow. So, do you have this course virtually? Because as you were talking, I'm like, wow, I think I need to learn and I want to be part of it. So for all of us watching, do you have any materials virtually that folks can join and learn and make sure that they are also up to speed about what is happening?
Yeah, it's funny. We've been doing them virtually in the COVID context. None of those for the campus context are recorded, but actually some of the ones that I've done in the prison context actually are recorded. And so
Okay.
perhaps a way to share some of those at some point.
Awesome, awesome. So we are getting to the point of starting to wrap up. So please, if you have questions, this is your time to ask Travis any questions you have. And I was just about to ask a question on advice, so this is perfect. What advice would you give young development professionals, Travis?
Yeah, well, the thing I always start with is what was given to me. And that is, I had two groups of mentors when I was coming along. And of course, I'm still coming along in many ways, but two groups. One group said, hey, man, you need to find one thing you love, drill down on it, become the best at it, and go, full bore in that direction. The other group said, hey, look, you're 20, you're 21, you're 22 years old. You don't need to try to pick one thing. Go out and do all kinds of stuff. See what you like, see what you don't like, and then figure out the way that you want to go forward. And I took the path of that second group of mentors, not only because I thought it was the smartest way to go, but also because when you're starting out, you may not be able to get exactly the thing you want, right? And so for me, my main criteria was that it be focused on the Africa region. Well, that could be education, that could be malaria, that could be water and sanitation, that could be refugees, that could be governance, right? But the thing for me was just to get to Africa. And so let's just say you're doing something on water and sanitation, but you really want to be doing work related to refugees. Well, you don't think refugees need water and sanitation? You don't think
They do.
refugees education or to be free from malaria, right? And so sometimes you start where you are, and that reminds me of my favorite quote from Arthur Ashe, the African American tennis legend. He says, "Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can." Meaning that in any context, if you just do that, you should be able to grow and to develop in the direction that you want to go. And the last thing that I would say is for people to develop community, develop community, develop community. I don't believe in the concept of networking because I think it's too transactional. But I believe in the idea of building a community of people who care about what you care about, study what you study, have already been where you want to go, or if it's a mentorship for you, you're talking to people who want to go where you currently are,
Yeah.
trying to build in that way, based on another saying that's a favorite of mine, that you have to build your well before you're thirsty. If you wait, then you're just asking for people for things who maybe they don't know you, or it is a more transactional thing. But if you build community, you will always have that support in any direction that you want to pivot.
Awesome. So we have a couple more questions, Travis. What's your favorite place on the continent?
Oh man, nobody should put me in that kind under that
Wait, so it's not Ghana. You didn't give me
pressure.
food, and you're not giving me the favorite place,
Well,
Travis. Come on.
let me tell you, my favorite place on the continent is the continent. So obviously, and now let's see, I've probably been to maybe 35 or 40 African nations. And so it's impossible for me to name a favorite. But the last two I went to at the end of last year was Ghana and Senegal, both of which I love. And of course, I started in Ethiopia. And I love Sudan. I can't pick one. I can't pick one. It's impossible.
Travis. Okay. Moving on. So, what's the best way to encourage our youth, particularly high school and college students, to build an understanding of Africa and the people of its diaspora?
Yes, I see this brilliant question from my brilliant sister. I think that the best way is to make it relevant to their lives. And so, what I try to do, just like I talked about in the beginning of our conversation, is to have, well, let me just put it this way. First, for students in our community, students that are of African descent, that they can find their place in the world by finding out about their connection to Africa, about their heritage, and about why we find ourselves in the context that we do as it relates to that history. And that has been part of my journey And that knowledge and that understanding really informs everything I do. But I think for the broader community, let's just say in the United States, people need to understand the way in which Africa creates America, right? That there actually is no America as we know it without Africa, without the extracted labor that was gotten by force and violence from the people of Africa. The way that gave America the seed capital to become the most powerful industrialized military economic force in the history of the world on the backs of their centuries of labor. The way in which their religious expression informs America, the way in which their literary and artistic expressions inform America, to the point that even though we are just 40 million or just over 40 million people in the United States, much of what people consider to be American culture is actually our culture. And so you can see the power that comes out of us. But where do we come from? We come from the people of Africa. And so that connection is made in its continuum. So it does one job, or it can do one job for youth and students in our community, but it can also do another job for students from diverse and various backgrounds in America to understand that this place that you now see as a kind of a basket case of conflict and disease and warfare is actually at the root of the reason why you can live the life that you can live in America right now. And that's just the history. I haven't even started talking about cocoa, of course, where 85% of the world's cocoa is coming from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, that region where they border. Start talking about diamonds. Start talking about gum arabic. Sudan, the #1 exporter of that. Without that, you can't have shampoo and candy and Coca-Cola and all kinds of confectionery, sugar. You can't propose to your fiance without these diamonds. You can't live the life that we live in the West, even with our laptops and our phones that we're on now, without the precious resources that Africa leads the world in providing us. And so if you remove Africa from the planet Earth, the life that we know and have come to love would not be possible. And I don't think enough people understand that.
I love that. Love it, love it. So our last questions for you today. So what would be your advice to your 20-year-old self, your 30-year-old self, and your 40-year-old self?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think the advice would in a lot of ways be the same.
Okay.
That is just to keep going.
Okay.
To keep going, to keep going. Now I say that because you asked me the question about myself. And one of the blessings that I have is that I found my path and my purpose at a very early age. And so I knew no matter what, I wasn't going off the course.
Yeah.
And so that protected me from sometimes ideas that people in my family had about who I should be or what I should. That protected me from the peer pressure of my youth, from the peer pressure in the streets to do this, that, the other. No, I'm going this way. No, I can't do that because I'm doing this. And for me, that is what it has always been. And so having that gift. And so the thing is, I think for people to find out whatever that is for their lives, is it service? Is it arts? Is it community? Is it business? Is it diplomacy? Is it any number of activities and human endeavors? And once you can get into it, to go into it all the way. And sometimes, we have situations where our dream is different from the thing we have to do to pay the bill. Understand that. And we've all had that context, either in our own lives or in the lives of our loved ones. But I would say we always find a way to make a way to do the things we want to do. And so I would just encourage people to continue to strive in that way.
Awesome. So before we leave, I know I said it was the last question, but I have to ask this question. So as the new president of USADF, presidency of USADF, what is one thing that you wish all of us watching today would know about this great organization? And what is one call to action that you give us before we jump off?
Yeah, I would say that, last couple of years, Afia, it has become popular to talk about decolonizing aid, right? This idea that the West is the best, and the West is the teacher of the rest, and
Yeah.
this notion of the white man's burden that underlines development assistance in historical and sometimes contemporary ways, but that the USADF actually began the process of decolonizing aid over 40 years ago when we were founded in 1980, because we do not arrive on the continent telling anybody what to do, telling them what the best ideas are, what the best direction to go is. Instead, we seek out African leadership, African ingenuity, African entrepreneurs, and we say, tell us what you're doing and how we can help you. And I think that begins to turn that paradigm on its head. And I think just in terms of a call to action as it relates to that, for people to understand, and I know the people that are on this call would know that we should be engaging Africa on its own terms,
Yeah.
not because of any other global power, not because of any notion of global power competition, but because the Africa region is just as important as any region in the world, because the Africa region has contributed so much to America that we couldn't exist without it, and because in many ways the future of the world is linked up in what happens on the African continent.
What an empowering way to end this session with you today. Thank you so much, Travis. We know you are super busy, so we don't take your time for granted. So thank you for giving us this hour to get to know you. And for all those that joined and stayed with us throughout the entire hour, we are very grateful. And we're just asking that you keep learning about USADF and all the programs that we have going on, all the initiatives that we have going on. And if you have any questions, please, you can reach out to us on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, on our website. Any way that you think that you can find us, we are there. And with that, Travis, we just want to say thank you once again, and have an awesome day. And to everyone else, have an awesome day and an awesome week. Bye-bye all.
Hey, let me just say quickly, Afia, thank you so much to everyone. I've never done IG Live before.
You were fantastic.
Afia won't tell you how nervous I was about doing this. You guys made it wonderful and fun. As she said, all the ways you can find us. You can find me at Travis L. Adkins on Twitter, Travis Adkins as well on LinkedIn and other platforms. Thank you guys so much from all over the world for joining us.
Thank you. And once again, welcome to USADF, Travis.
Thank you guys. Take
Bye
care.
all.